mestizo to kanadiko instituto igaftite megalia keria na kano erbenes tinelada que tem telepesis nefresiso olusas puesate inumegali kara academia brisco me ado popse prostaste napoli oreo afroaterio desde costa borono cano ftite parosis staleneka como cantelo mi amera ma stato cano staleneka anyway yeah, thank you very much for coming. Tonight I'm going to be discussing the research project that I've been working on during my time at the CIG. I will be discussing the spread of the cult of the obscure goddess Enodia in and out of Thessaly. This is a deity whom many of you will probably have previous familiarity with. I first became exposed to this deity Enodia during my first season at, whoops, this is not my PowerPoint, sorry. I first became exposed to this deity Enodia during my first season at the Greek-Canadian excavations at Castro Calithea in Thessaly, where I started working in 2009 during my undergrad. And since the goddess Enodia was one of the most important regional divinities in Thessaly, I was naturally made aware of her cult during my work at the site, where Enodia might have been worshipped. My master's thesis, which I completed at UBC last September, dealt with issues of syncretism in the cult of Enodia. And I plan to write my PhD dissertation on trends in the distribution of Thessalian sanctuaries, which I will be starting at the University of Alberta this September. This September. This current research project on Enodia is sort of a transitional project between my MA and my PhD research topic, since it addresses issues from both. And it will ultimately form a part of my dissertation. Tonight's lecture, however, will discuss earlier research on the cult of Enodia and challenge some of the previous scholarship. The findings in this presentation are currently only preliminary, since I still have 3 months of my fellowship left, but I hope it's still going to be enlightening nonetheless. Thessaly is not one of the most well-studied regions of Greece, but scholarship on Thessaly has increased within the past few decades. Thessalian religion in particular has been a topic of increasing interest within recent years. There was a BSA conference on Thessalian cults and sanctuaries at the end of November, beginning of December last year. Greek religion manifested itself differently in every region of Greece, and it is necessary to study regional cults in order to fully understand Greek religion. Thessaly was home to a large number of regional deities, and the goddess Enodia was one of these. The name Enodia has been known in Thessalian inscriptions by classical scholars since the late 1800s, but Enodia was not recognized as an independent deity at the time. Martin Nilsson and Louis Richard Farnell believed her to be only a local version of the goddess Artemis or Hecate, with whom she is iconographically similar. And Vilimovitz identified Enodia as one of the older gods of Greece, endemic to Thessaly, who was later syncretized with Hecate. These earlier scholars believed that Enodia was a goddess of witchcraft. However, the most significant and most substantial work on Enodia to date is Pavlos Chrysostomous' 1998 monograph, which came from his 1993 dissertation, I Thessaloniki Thea Enodia, I Phaeaia Thea, the Thessalian goddess Enodia, or the Phaeacian goddess. He brought together all the archaeological, epigraphic, and literary evidence from within and without Thessaly that was available at the time to discern her roles and attributes. Chrysostomou believes that Enodia was originally a terrifying underworld deity who later developed more benevolent aspects. Enodia's cult spread throughout all of Thessaly and then spread to other parts of the Greek world, and any future work on Enodia will be eternally indebted to Chrysostomou's work. However, some of Chrysostomou's work's ideas needs to be revised because they have become unsupportable based on more recent scholarship on Thessaly and Greek religion. There have also been more recent works on Enodia. For example, Catherine Morgan, the director of the BSA, discussed Enodia's role in Thessalian state formation in her 2003 monograph on Greek ethne. And Denver Graninger completed a dissertation on Thessalian regional cults in 2006, which discusses the epigraphic evidence for Enodia and questions some of Chrysostomou's ideas. Now, it's been 20 years since Chrysostomou's dissertation, and we know a lot more about Thessaly now than we did then. And it is for this reason that I have undertaken this revision of the older scholarship. Before I continue on to discussing the evidence for the cult of Enodia, I am going to give a brief introduction on Thessaly and relevant parts of its history to situate the cult in its geographic and political setting. So, Thessaly has always been a very well-defined region consisting of alluvial plains surrounded by mountains on all sides. We have Mount Othrys to the south, the Tindus mountain range to the west, the Pelian Mountains to the east, Mount Ossa, and of course Mount Olympus in the north. And this is Mount Olympus seen from southern Thessaly, and this is the soccer shed where the boys from my dig live in during the summer. Thessaly was open to the sea only on the Pagasetic Gulf and the Vale of Tempe, and the region is very diverse in climate. Inland, we get a more continental climate with more extremes in temperature, whereas the area around the Pagasetic Gulf has a more Mediterranean climate. Thessaly was the largest grain-producing region in Greece because of its vast fertile plains that were excellent for raising horses, for which Thessaly was famous in antiquity. And the western part of Thessaly is marshy and less conducive to agriculture. And the mountainous areas surrounding the plain were more reliant on animal husbandry. Thessaly has been inhabited since the Paleolithic period and was Greece's central hub of activity in the Neolithic period. It was the northern border of Mycenaean civilization, and the region thrived during the early Iron Age. But we're mostly interested in the Archaic period to the Hellenistic period. In the late 6th century BC, a myth-historical figure named Alloas the Red is said to have organized the plains of Thessaly into 4 tetrads, and that is a picture of Alloas the Red on a coin from Larissa. He divided the plains of Thessaly into 4 tetrads: Astiaiotis, Thessaliotis, Theotis, and Pelasgiotis. The surrounding regions, or perioikoi, had a very close relationship to tetradic Thessaly, and they were either allies and or subjects of the Thessalians. The tetrads were populated by feudal city-states, ruled by powerful dynastic families, and the land was worked by a class of serfs called the Pinesi. Thessaly was very active in pan-Hellenic political affairs during the Archaic period, but in the Classical period, they were mostly involved in fighting each other. What is relevant to us from this period is the rise of the tyrants of Pherae, who seized power in the late 5th century and established the only tyranny in Thessaly. Everywhere else in Thessaly was an oligarchy. The tyranny had territorial ambitions over all of Thessaly. Jason of Pherae, who was a highly competent military commander and a very charismatic figure, managed to become the ruler of all Thessaly except for Pharsalos in 375 BC. And he even expressed his intentions to rule all of Greece. And some historians even think that he was a realistic threat. But he was assassinated by the Thessalian aristocracy in 370 on his way to lead the Pythian Games at Delphi. The Thessalians later got Philip II of Macedon to come down and get rid of the Pheraean tyrants, and not long after that, Thessaly came under Macedonian hegemony until the Romans liberated the region in 197. And Enodia developed within this historical background. So, the earliest certain evidence for the cult of Enodia is an inscription to Enodia from Larissa from the 5th century, which is what we see here. I will mention this again later. But the cult is probably older than that. The earliest possible evidence for the cult of Enodia is found in the city of Pherae, which is now underneath the modern town of Velestino. Pherae will be discussed quite a lot in this presentation. This is Pherae, the second largest city in ancient Thessaly. This is the modern-day city of Velestino, and on this Google map, in the red, I've drawn in where the fortifications were, and I've listed some of the major sanctuaries in the city. The Acropolis was on this mound over here, called Magula Bakali, and north of the ancient city, just outside of the city walls, was one of Thessaly's most important sanctuaries. In this area, excavated by the Greeks and the French in the 1920s. In it, they found the foundations of a large temple and numerous votive deposits. And this is that